Hey Playas, how you doing? Welcome back to Playas Guide. On this episode of Playas Guide, we're going to take a look at collecting for the Nintendo 64 in 2022 and what is going on with the current market. Right, so what I've noticed over on price charting within the last 2 months, I want to say maybe less, is that Nintendo 64 has taken a massive dip. Has this actually happened? Have you experienced this with the Nintendo 64? Now, I have seen some games cool off, but I haven't seen a massive dip. So I want to do some investigating. That's what we're going to do here. And we're going to look into why this is happening. Okay, so here we are on price charting, and you can clearly see here the dip that I'm talking about. Now we've got a bit of an update since I last saw it, so there's a little bit more going on down here, but that is a steep drop. One thing to note here about this drop is it is on the average price of the Nintendo 64 game, and it appears on the median, but definitely not as steep of a drop. There's a drop, but not as steep. Now, for those of you that don't know, the average would be, if we take the price of all the Nintendo 64 games, let's say that's sold, and then we divide that by the number of games that sold, there is your average price point of the Nintendo 64 game. The median is like the most regularly occurring number, the most regularly occurring sale price within all the Nintendo 64 games. So just to give you an idea, so we're going to take a rundown of where the market's at. We're going to look at the 10 most popular games, the rare and expensive games, and then a couple games that have seen some price changes towards the end that you may not know about. And that is going to give us, hopefully, an indication of where this big drop came from. All right, let's dive right into it. All right, players, I do want to preface this by saying, before we get started with Super Mario 64 here, that not every price may be accurate here on price charting. And that's the site I'm using because the way it's laid out, it's, it shows us probably the most accurate price point for a lot of games, but not everything's 100%. Not every game here is going to be accounted for, and we'll get into that. I'll show you what I mean in terms of the accuracy there. All right, players, we got Mario 64. That is the most popular game on the Nintendo 64, probably without a doubt. Now, you can see here that this game has not seen like a huge increase over the years. Here, it looks like there was a loose copy that sold for a lot. Now, I want to say this. When dealing with price charting, which is the site that I use, and I know a lot of you guys go to as well for pricing, it is not 100% accurate. Some of these games that we see here may not be reflected here, and we'll get to that, and you'll see what I mean. Their sale points may not be reflected there. Also, you got to take into consideration condition and some of these listings. Some of these listings were not listed correctly, and they somehow make it into the loose pricing. And that's what we're looking at. The loose North American cartridges. And I believe we're dealing with US dollars here for this. Am I correct? Or is this Canadian? Either way, it'll give you a pretty good idea of where the prices have gone and are going. But that's what we're looking at here. But anyways, Mario 64, steady. It has gone up over time. Now it's averaging around $30, but it was a $20 game for the longest time, I remember. Really, you're not going to find it cheaper than that. If you do, you got yourself a bargain. But $20 to $30 is the average price all day long for the past decade. Closer to 30 now, though. Could this bump have affected it? No, I don't think so. Possibly. There's a lot of games that had peaks and them coming off those peaks could have cumulatively had an effect on that dip, but there's more things at play here. Now here's the thing about the average. We had yesterday there was 3 copies sold that are listed here, all on eBay there. The day before there was, what do we got? Six copies, I think that is there. So yeah, a game that sells regularly. This is just on eBay, right? So these numbers in that will add up to, maybe a significant price point. But when we get to some of the more expensive games, you'll see that even these 3 copies of Mario that sold, all for over $30, still less than $100. So if a game like Sculptor's Cut dropped $100, that has just as much of an impact, if not a greater, on the average. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because of the value and because this is divided by 3, right? So that will be 200, right? $100 for Sculptor's Cut, we're just saying, and then $100 for Mario 64. $200, right? 100 plus 100 is 200. We divide that by 4. That's $50. $50 then becomes the average selling price for those 4 Nintendo 64 games. So if we look right across the board, if there's some expensive games dropping or a popular game that's taken a hit, that's probably where the majority of that decline has come from. And you're going to see that here. Okay, so let's move on. Number 2, Zelda Ocarina of Time. This game has done nothing but go up by the looks of it, but slowly and surely. Now it's around a $35, $40 game. Before you might have been able to pick it up, I don't know, about $10 there. I'm going to say 15 to 20. And then it also, this, I think price charting has the gold cartridge listed differently as a separate listing. So the gray cartridge comes up as the more popular and cheaper version of the game. So I believe that's what we're looking at. But again, maybe not 100% accurate. Some of those could be tied into the listings here that we've seen. All right, the number 3 game they got is Conkers Bad Fur Day. Over the years, this game has just continued to go up. I remember it was a $20 game, then a $40 game for a very long time. Then it went 50, 60, then just kept going up. And then when the pandemic hit, we could see here that it had a pretty good jump there, right? It went from, it says 60. I'm going to say it was like a 70, maybe $80 game to a $90 game. And it wasn't done. Now it's going for what looks to be easily over $100, but we're going to say around 120 is the price on Conkers now. So it's doing the opposite of dropping. It's still going up, and I don't think that game is going to lose too much steam. It's a good game. It's a popular and sought after game, and it's very uncommon. So, all those things mixed together kind of we get the Earthbound effect a little bit there, or the Chrono Trigger effect, where the game holds value really well. Now, 007 GoldenEye, this is a game that I never really liked that much, and it was under $10 for a very long time. I didn't like this game because everybody I knew owned this game or grew up with this game and would just own me at it. It was, they just come in, crush the game, end each other, and I would get totally rocked. So I never could get into it because I just never had a chance to ever get good. And because of that, I didn't like it enough to sit down and really put a lot of time into it. But this one's crept up, $25, $30 now, it looks like. Had a peak there, a big spike. Some of these spikes that we do see, I don't know how accurate they are. Like I said, there could be some version that's in here. If we look at April 20th down here, we'd really have to search. We're not going to do that. Anyways, if we went through it and really dove deep and looked into this game, maybe this one had the manual and it was in really good shape, and that's why it sold for, maybe $15 more than a regular copy. Or shipping could have been free. Everybody else was paying $10 or $15 shipping here. This guy got it for free, so he spent it worked out to be $2 or $3 cheaper. So why not, right? Um, that could have been it too. We don't know what happened here with some of these peaks, but there definitely was. We are going to see within the last year or two a lot of games that had a big peak. Mario Kart 64, one of my favorite Mario Karts. I love this game. Always, in my opinion, was about $20. It's gone up now. It's around 40, but you know what? It's worth it. It is. A lot of these popular games have just slowly gone up in price. So if you don't have them yet and you want them, you don't have to pay an arm and a leg for them, at least not at this point. I also have this theory with inflation that games aren't really going to come down too much with inflation, for the simple fact that everything is worth more now. It's just the way it is. Everything is more expensive. Games just were a little bit ahead of that. We will see things cool off, though, because there probably won't be as many people rushing out to buy, as many video games as they were during the pandemic when they might have had a little bit of extra cash and time. Zelda's Majora's Mask. This is a popular game. It's looks like it's going for around $65 to $70 right now. It's continuously gone up over time. I don't remember it ever being below $20. I think it was always a $20 game. But let's take a look here at Zelda versus Mario, because they're both popular. But why does Zelda sell for so much more than, let's say, Mario 64? And keep in mind, we're probably looking at just the regular version of Majora's Mask here, not the one with the holographic label. Nothing special about this version here. I mean, there could be some mixed in there. But the thing about Zelda is it has a bigger following. And not necessarily a bigger following than Mario being popular, but it has more of a dedicated fan base. I guess that's what I should say. And that dedicated fan base is always growing. It's not shrinking. They're not going away, the fans. The Zelda franchise is picking up just over the years more and more fans of the franchise, and they want to play some of the older Zelda games. This game is, a different kind of Zelda game, and it has a really good reputation. People want to buy it. That's my theory anyways. I mean, the game is going to go up because the Nintendo 64 went through the nostalgia factor recently. That could be part of the dip too. The nostalgia factor for the Nintendo 64 is kind of coming to an end. So we are going to see prices just naturally plateau. That, and with other gaming consoles sort of cooling off after the pandemic as well, could be causing a bit of a dip. But we're not seeing it here with Majora's Mask or many of these other popular games. Super Smash Brothers is another big franchise that came out of the Nintendo 64. Another game that was always around $20. Now it looks like it's around $40. So it's doubled, but it's doubled over the course of an entire decade. So this didn't happen overnight. If you didn't pick it up, you could still pick it up, and $40 is not bad for a Smash Brothers game. Anyways, that one is definitely not being affected too much by the nostalgia factor or this dip that we've seen. Pokemon Stadium, this one just squeaks by in the top 10 according to price charting. This game was dirt cheap. This was like a $5, $7 game. I don't remember seeing it below $5 because it is Pokemon. Pokemon's always been popular. I think this is another franchise that just picks up fans along the way. It's not every gamer loves Pokemon. Every gamer loves Zelda. We all love Mario, right? But not Pokemon necessarily. But there is that dedicated fan base, and they have helped drive this game up, along with nostalgia factor, people collecting for the N64. Why wouldn't it? Now it's like $30. This one's really gone up. That's quite the difference, but it's been very gradual. And it's not like it's the prices through the roof now either. Now, here we're going to get to some that do make the top 10 that are a bit more expensive. Paper Mario is one of the harder, if not maybe the hardest Mario game to find on the N64. It's also a good game and a popular game. And this was a very unique game when it came out. Paper Mario franchise is still coming out with games today. There's been one on every console since for Nintendo. So it has popularity. But during the pandemic, look at that. It went from like a $20 game to a $45 game. And then when the pandemic hit, this one friggin' shot up. It doubled in price. It's cooled off a little bit now, but it's really still up there. All right, so Clay Fighters, Sculptors, Cut. This is the rare game on the Nintendo 64 that everybody wants for their collections. And it was, I remember when it was cheap, but not that cheap. I guess around here, maybe $70, $60, $70. I remember that was the going rate for a while, but it was always hard to find a clean copy of this game. And over the years, it's just continued to go up and up and up. And the pandemic hit, and everybody had nostalgia factor and money and wanted a complete N64 set, so they bought this game. And now it's easily over 1,000. Hasn't sold for under 1,000 in, I guess, over. Oh no, that's February. There, it sold for. Oh, that's 1,000 for about a year. Yeah, for about a year, it's been over $1,000. Might cool down a bit, but I can see long term, this game's not going to take much of a hit in price because of the reputation for rarity that it has amongst the Nintendo 64 library. Now, let's take this and lead into some of the other rare games on the Nintendo 64. Bomberman 64. This game's really gone up. I can't remember what I got this game for. $35-$40, something like that. Maybe around this time, 2010, 2011, which, hey, that's what it says it went for. I didn't think it was too hard to find, but at the point we're at now with N64, most of the rare games their rarity is reflected in the price because the market is very well established now at this point for the Nintendo 64. There are a few that I find that are harder to find, and price doesn't necessarily reflect it too much, but we do see a little bit of that. We've seen that with the NES too, and things like, Toxic Crusaders and Swamp Thing. I don't know where Defenders of Diatron City and Attack of Killer Tomatoes are at, but I think they've gone up a bit too. A lot of them uncommon, obscure sort of games have definitely gone up a lot on that console. We're going to see a bit of that still on the Nintendo 64, but let's take a look at Bomberman because this is one that is widely recognized as a rare. We do see some peaks and drops here, though, that occurred recently. Do you see that? The game was flirting with $300, and now it's closer to $200, down to $230, $225. That would affect a drop, especially depending on how many sold, just because the value is nearly $100 drop there. So if we're selling, look, 2 a day, 1 last week, a couple or 3 last week, 5 or 6 the week before, they are selling still for over 200, not 300 though. The price has cooled off a bit on that. Let's take a look at Worms. So Worms has just gone up and up and up. Worms is one that I've really never see. I've always thought was quite rare, and it has been recognized as a more rare game. I would say like Worms, Super Bowling, and Sculptor's Cut, in my opinion, are the top 3 rarest N64 games from the North American released licensed library. Okay. I guess retail or whatever too, because we can get in a non-variant. You guys know what I mean. I don't need to get into all the details. Stunt Racer 64. I never thought this game was really that rare. I used to see it all the time. And look, it was like a $3-$4 game. I guess people always saw it all the time, and then we started to see less and less of it. And I also think it got like some YouTube hype and stuff too behind it. But that caused it to go up. Like, what happened here? What is it like? Please comment below and let me know what happened here in what is it? July of 2016 to September of 2016. Why did it shoot up $100? That's crazy. And then it crawled back down, but then it crawled right back up. Pandemic hit and it shot up. That's quite the peak here. of about $100. So over a period of time, and then it dropped down. That, like, these sort of things here with these big games that drop $100 or more, that affects the average a lot. And I think I kind of explained a bit of that analogy to you guys in terms of the Super Mario being worth almost double, like $20 more, just because it gets averaged out with, say, a game like this that only might have sold one copy on the same day. And if there's enough of these rare games selling, right, there's like 2 copies sold on this day. So that can have a real big impact on the average. And I think there's enough of that going on that it has affected the average price of the N64 game. And that's what we've seen. Super Bowling, super cheap game. I didn't really think it was that rare. I didn't think it was common at all. Like, I knew it was like a little bit rare, but people really think this game is rare. And I got no reason to ever doubt them, because I only came across this game once in the wild, and I picked it up for $12 in the box with half a manual. It was ripped. The cover was the part of the half I got anyways. This game is worth a lot of money now. More than $12. I feel really good about that. That's why I mentioned it to you guys. So here it's over $700. Just below now. It looks like it's cooling off. I mean, it's just a bowling game. There's not much else to it. It's just straight up bowling on the N64. Wouldn't say it's bad. Wouldn't say it's good. It's, it's pretty standard what you would expect from a bowling game. It's easy. It's an easy game, actually. So yeah, let's just say around $700. This one, I think this one has a lot of hype behind it. I don't know how well it's going to hold that 700, but I do think over time it will continue to go up. All right, so let's look at some like really truly rare and interesting stuff. By the way, that I don't think really is going to affect that curve that much, even though it's cooled off a bit. Turok Rage Wars Gray. This is one of the rarest games on the N64. I remember there was a time you could get this game for just over $100. During the pandemic, I don't know what happened here. Now, like, people going nuts for this game. It almost hit $1,000. Then here's a slope. Look at this. It's dropped right there. You see it drop about $300. That is what I'm talking about. That is going to affect the average. It's going to impact it in a big way. It's going to maybe snuff out 2 of those top tier popular N64 games with just one sale, right? And it's gonna impact that curve so much. So this is what we're looking at here: how the popular games and some of these rare and expensive games that are dipping down have really affected the average that we saw on price charting. Here's a great example of it: the Nintendo 64 Test Cartridge. Very, very rare. I can't believe this. Look at that. Over $6,000. What a jump. But look at this, is only a couple sales. There's not much really listed here, is there? 1, 2, 3 for this year, 1 for last year. But that's not accurate, because where are these copies that are listed? This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. And then it dropped way down right there from March 2022 to April. $3,000. I think this game, this drop here that we've seen in the test cartridge, because there was a couple copies that sold for an exuberant amount of cash, caused that dip, coupled with a few of the other more rare and expensive games dipping too, and a little bit of a dip here, a little bit cool off with some of the popular stuff. A few of them. Yeah, that's what's doing it. And who knows what's going on with some of the commons. Maybe the nostalgia factor's run its course with them. People are back to paying, $2 or $3 for Madden, whatever Madden was on the N64 that is cheap, and maybe someone paid $5 for it before. All right, let's take a look at some big price changes that we've seen recently in the N64. All right, here we got Looney Tunes, Daffy Duck in Duck Dodgers. This was a common game that I saw everywhere. It was a cheap game. Not always the cheapest game, like a value bin game. But yeah, we could see $7 or $8 here loose. You could probably find it for 5 or 6 somewhere back in the day. No problem. Again, here's one that you can comment below. Let me know what happened. It creeped up a little bit. You know, as nostalgia factor kicked in, this was probably one of the non-sports racing games that people saw and started buying. But then, yeah, here in August of 2015, it shot way up to $40, and it never, like, it came back down. It cooled off a bit, but it not really. Like, it kept going up. During the pandemic here, people went bonkers for it. Look at this. Here's a peak here. There's a big peak that could have helped cause the big peak that we saw on the average. There you have it. There's a dip, but now it's kind of crept back up. So this game's over $100 now. I can't believe that. That's crazy. Let's take a look at the Mystical Ninja games. Mystical Ninja. So this was always a $20 game, and it started creeping up to $40. Okay, that's fair, you know, especially as more and more people are collecting for the Nintendo 64. And then look at this. Boom, one big spike. Boom, a second big spike, and now it's over $100 since during the pandemic. Now, I do think some of these will cool down. Over $100 for this game. Maybe, I think it'll come back down to around 70 or 80 bucks. Okay, so now let's take a look at Golems Great Adventure, the other Mystical Ninja game, which is a really good game. I like this one a lot more. And this is a very uncommon game. The other game I see around. This one I really don't see around very much. And it had a little bit of a premium going for it for a while, which just built and built and built. And then here we see during the pandemic, it really went up there. Wow, up to $150. But there was a lot of hype here, and that's why it's dropped back down. And if we've sold enough copies here, something like this does show a pretty good reflection of what the average kind of is, right? Like the N64 market, where it went. This one definitely went a little bit more stream than the entire N64 market in terms of price increase. But we did see over the past few years, prices really go up on the N64, and now it's cooling back down to somewhere maybe more suitable. Like this could be around $100, $120. I could see that because it's a good game. It's a very hard to find game. All right, let's look at some other games we got here. Donald Duck Going Quackers. I've always considered this one to be a bit of a hidden gem on the Nintendo 64. There's some stages in it that play a little bit like Crash Bandicoot, and there's not a lot of great platformers on N64. This is one of them. Price did not reflect it. This is also a very uncommon game, more so than Duck Dodgers. I don't know why that one is so expensive. Anyways, this one started to creep up, and over the pandemic, and probably because of nostalgia factor and all the people going for complete N64 collections, found out, hey, there's this Donald Duck game. It's pretty good, hard to find, and price has gone up. I think the price will go up more on this game because of that. Because as people collect for the N64, they may not want all the crappy games that are on the console. Here's a good one. And it's still only just above $40, which is not too bad. Worth adding to your collection. I can tell you that. Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. This game was always just a little bit more, like $5 more than the regular Castlevania. And now look at it. Wow. You know what? I haven't really come across this game in a game store for a while either, now that I think about it. But it just kind of kept going up. Typical, like we've seen this for most N64 games, right? They've all, kind of gone up just a little bit, creeping up in price. And then during the pandemic, it went nuts. Now it went to 150 and it did dip down. There's certain games here, I think, that we've seen people go really wild for during the pandemic. And now they lost a bit of steam. a bit of that's going to affect your average overall price and the median too. So that we did see a dip there. And this game, yeah, it's cooling down now. I get why. I don't think it's going to go back down to 40 or 50 though. I think it's still going to stay high. Could go sub 100, but I mean, we'll see. All right, Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. This one was always deemed like a secret rare, I think, among the N64 collectors. Now, whether you truly believe that or not, or maybe people's opinions have changed since 2012, 2013, 10 years ago. Wow, it doesn't seem that long ago. Anyways, the game now, just before the pandemic started to climb, and during the pandemic really climbed, was around $100. Now it's taken a dip. Last time I checked, I didn't see this dip here. It was a $100 game, but it's cooling off too. All these factors of things cooling off. Like I said, N64 is going to cool off a bit. Nostalgia factor is kind of done. Like there's definitely gonna it's still gonna always exist, but not to the level it was at. Where people who played this game or these Nintendo 64 games in their childhood. So here's the other thing too. I want to say. Actually, I'm going to say it at the end because we got one more game here I want to touch upon. Ogre Battle, one of the very few RPGs. It's no wonder this game has gone up, because if you're looking for a great RPG on the Nintendo 64, this is like your only option. It's one of the only options. There's a few. There's Quest 64, Aiden Chronicles. I don't know about Paper Mario. Maybe if you know what I mean. Like, you're kind of hard pressed there, but if we were trying to make a list, it might be on it because it's the closest thing you got in a lot of cases. Here's one of the only RPGs. Not a bad game. The Ogre Battle series is kind of a cool series. I always seen it as like not like a top 10 tier rare, but a rare on the N64. And it was $30-$40 game a lot of times. Same with Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon kind of falls in this boat. A little bit harder to find. So what I want to add to this before I go is that we've seen the Nintendo 64 go through the big nostalgia factor peak. But why is it that maybe people are still nostalgic for the PS1 or even the Super Nintendo or the Genesis? Well, I'll tell you why. They got bigger libraries. The N64, if you were collecting pre-pandemic, was a cheap library to buy. It was a smaller library than any of those other libraries around that time of games people might have been playing. That when it hit the nostalgia factor, it's going to fizzle out quicker because it's an easier collection to complete. That's it. And that's why we see games like a Donald Duck going Quackers, a game I thought was a hidden gem, maybe not so hidden anymore, because those are the last few games people are needing or going after because they're hearing about good games and not necessarily going for a complete set, but they're going for the good stuff. That is the state of Nintendo 64 collecting. I hope I've explained some things here to you as we took a deep dive into what is going on. Not too deep, but we covered our bases. Thank you so much for tuning into this video. Please consider subscribing to Playas Guide if you are not already. One big click from you makes a big difference here. We got a great Discord that you can join the discussion about video games, retro games, game collecting. You can join us over there. You can join us over on Twitch in the chat and come hang out there throughout the week. And you can follow Playas Guide on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time, I'll